So give us a rundown of Hanukkah. Where do we
Hanukkah,
find it?
First, there's a word called Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Right? Hanukkah. It's used in the Torah.
Yes.
Okay. It means dedication.
Yes.
And it's used in the Torah. It's in the book of Numbers a couple times for the dedication of
the temple,
of the altar, particularly of the Mizbeach. And the Mizbeach is where they slaughter and
now give us a rundown. We see it once or twice in Daniel, twice in Ezekiel, and then
it's just a handful of times.
Yeah,
and it's then it's used for the dedication of the house, which is the temple, dedication of the temple, in Nehemiah a couple times for the dedication of the walls, building of the walls of Jerusalem.
Yeah,
that's it.
Okay,
and there's the one time where I think I just brought it up here. Is it Second Chronicles? Second Chronicles 7. On the 8th day, they held a solemn assembly. This is it says Hashmeni Atzeret. It's the 8th day. That is the day after the 7 days of Sukkot.
Okay,
and then it says,
you're
they had kept the Chanukot HaMizbeach Asu Shivat Yamim. And it's referring back to the prior 7 days as a celebration of the dedication of the new altar.
You're talking about 2 Chronicles 7 through 10.
Yeah. So that's called the 8th day there is not called a Hanukkah. It's the 7 days that are called a Hanukkah. 7 day, and the 8th day is called Shemona Atzeret. Does that make sense? So that this 8th day is not called a Hanukkah.
And during this time, what else was going on?
Well, this is This is Solomon's temple. This is like.
So this was not going on during the time of.
Let's assume this is Tabernacles.
So it's Sukkot.
Yeah, because it says Shemini Atzeret.
Actually, okay, hang on. Let's read the passage. Then Solomon consecrated the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord. For there he offered the burnt offerings and the fat of the peace offerings, because the bronze altar which Solomon had made was not able to contain the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fat. So Solomon observed the feast at that time for 7 days. Okay, so that's the feast. And all Israel with him, a very great assembly, who came from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Egypt. Was it brook? Yeah, the brook of Egypt, sorry. On the 8th day they held a solemn assembly for now here's our word, dedication of the altar. They observed 7 days, and the feast 7 days. So the thing that I find interesting is that he actually separates this. This might not make sense why I'm harping on this right now, but we're going to talk. This passage is going to become very instrumental down the road here in the show. So it says, for the dedication of the altar, they observed 7 days. So that word Hanukkah is right there. Hanuk is right there for the dedication of the altar. They observed 7 days, and the feast feast 7 days.
Right. So the word Chag is, remember, there's only 3 Chagim: Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And here it's Sukkot, 7 days of the dedication of the altar, and then there's verse 9, 2 Chronicles 7:9 is talking about Shemini Atzeret. It's not part of the Chag. It's not part of the Chanukat HaMizbeach. It's not part of the dedication of the altar. So anyway, that's just, we're not encountering this word Hanukkah much in the Tanakh, but it's there. And then if we look to sources from the Second Temple period, we have in Megillat Ta'anit, which is the scroll of fasting written in Aramaic. It's basically recounts the national important national days since the times of the Maccabees, which were given as days that it was forbidden to fast by strict Pharisees. Okay, so there are certain days that you would be forbidden to fast. Of course, these were not in the Torah; these were extra rules. Why was it forbidden to fast? Because fasting was seen as an expression of mourning and sorrow, and to take a day, it would be like in America, 4th of July, right? Declaration of Independence. It would be kind of like an extra zealous group of militia who are pro-Revolutionary War saying it is forbidden to fast on the 4th of July. Why? Because it must be a day of celebration. Okay, imagine that. So what Megillat Ta'anit is, the scroll of fasting, is a series of calendar days from the Maccabean time and tracing a lot of Maccabean national victories for Israel as national holidays on which it was forbidden to fast because they were days of celebration. And in this calendar, we have the word Hanukkah 3 times. We have it twice used for the dedication of the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem, 2 different days. One of those is the 7th of Iyar is for Hanukkah, dedication to the wall of Jerusalem. One is forbidden to fast or to eulogize. And there's another one on the 4th of Elul, is also a Hanukkah for building of Jerusalem, not allowed to fast or to eulogize. So then, though, we have it also for the 25th of Kislev, and it says Hanukkah of 8 days, a dedication of 8 days. And a different manuscript says 8 days of Hanukkah. One is forbidden to fast or to eulogize. Okay, so even here with this early Pharisaic calendar from the 1st century, we have Hanukkah used in more than one situation. Now, of course, this text is Hebrew and Aramaic, but then we have that's one set of sources. Now we go to our Greek sources.
Okay, hang on just a sec. So recap that for me. Put it into a nutshell. You're saying that what was the source?
The word Hanukkah is a Hebrew word used a handful of times in the scriptures.
Correct. Okay, I'm with you.
And it is used concerning the dedication of the altar.
Correct. Okay.
And particularly when Solomon built his temple. Then we have, I'm just looking at Hebrew language or Aramaic language text. We have what's called the Scroll of Fasting, which is a
Dead Sea Scroll.
No, it's a 1st century text that is celebrating Maccabean victories.
Okay.
And
I'm with you. I'm sorry.
But in any event, it has the word Hanukkah used both for dedicating 2 days where it's forbidden to fast because it's days of celebrating rebuilding walls in Jerusalem.
So are they using it as a verb there?
No, it's just a noun, Hanukkah.
Okay.
And then the last one, the third use, is the 25th of Kislev, where it says Hanukkah for 8 days. Forbidden to fast, forbidden to eulogize.
And that would be the festival.
That's
That
just
is
says
the
8 days of Hanukkah. Yeah.
Okay. Keep
now,
going.
so then we'd shift and we look. Okay, well, what about other language? Do we have anything in the Greek language, Jewish Greek, from the Second Temple period? And of course, we do. I think Caleb, you did some digging there from the Book of Maccabees.
Yes, of course.
I think First Maccabees, even Second Maccabees, starts out with a whole introduction as to why the Jewish communities in Egypt should celebrate Hanukkah.
And this is pre-Yeshua, right?
Yeah, this is like 100 BC.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? This is before both Maccabees we're presuming that both First and Second Maccabees, they're not written by the same author. It's not like First, Second Corinthians. We should clarify. So there's a whole history, of the extra canonical texts that we need to
non-canonical
keep in
text.
mind. But yeah, these aren't written by the same. It's later scholars call it First Maccabees, Second Maccabees, just to kind of put it in the umbrella because it tells the general story of the Maccabees. But they're not written by the same author, written in different times. But they're both composed in times when the Maccabees were in charge. So they're pre-Roman. They're pre-Roman occupation. This with a big deal, a lot of significance given to what's called the Feast of Dedication, and that it starts on the 25th of Kislev, and it's a celebration of the Maccabean victory over Antiochus Epiphanes. The basic story we know. Now, of course, as we'll probably talk about later, as many of our listeners know, there's no mention of a miracle of oil at this time or anything like that. That's a later, that pops onto the scene, 600 or 700 years later in the Babylonian Talmud, this idea of the miracle of eight days of oil. It's not a bad story. I'm just saying it's not in our.
Yeah, it's not It's not found anywhere in the non-canonical extra biblical literature.
In Second Temple period, yeah, it's not a Second Temple. So that's our source. We have Greek and Hebrew sources from the Second Temple period that use the word this Feast of Dedication, pointing to Maccabean victories, specifically the victory of the over Antiochus Epiphanes. But there are the two single days, Iyar and in Elul, for rebuilding the wall. But the 8-day Hanukkah is the big one, attested in all these Jewish sources. Now, of course, just a footnote, we don't have a record of Hanukkah in any of the Dead Sea Scroll texts. And because it's hard to argue from silence to say, well, they didn't believe in it. Well, we do have a calendar. It's not from Qumran. It's not on there. And it might be, some scholars have suggested this is because Qumran was not pro-Maccabee. In other words, they had a different sense of history and time and eschatology, and celebrating the feast of Hanukkah might not have been a priority for them because they saw it as a different sect of Judaism's interest.
But if we're speaking from a argument of silence, then we could say that they didn't celebrate Purim either.
That's true, and there's no book of Esther found at Qumran. So that's what some scholars have surmised from this, is that Purim and Hanukkah were not acknowledged as holidays by the Yachad, by the Essenes. So that's just a footnote. We don't need to dive into there, but it's just a footnote. And of course, there's difficulties, like you said, it's argument from silence. What if all the Purim scrolls they had disappear, rotted away, and we just don't have them. So, but anyway, it is clear that in the first century, the big deal Hanukkah was what we think of now as starting with the 25th of Kislev, 25th of the 9th month, extending, an 8-day feast.